Memories of Rose Betty Wilkinson, née Hand, born 21st of March 1919 at 80 James Street, Louth. The Louth Flood. My memories about Louth Flood. I only remember incidents that Mother told me about as I grew older. On that Saturday afternoon, after thunder, rain, etc., the flood came in a rush. Dad, for some reason, was resting upstairs, and when Mum got scared, she called him. He straight away opened the door to rush to rescue his mum and dad next door. That was the last cottage near the technical school. A passage parted the two houses. And when the water got so bad, I was put in a basket on top of the stairs, which held the clean washing. Eventually they were all rescued out of the bedroom windows, and another old lady was washed on the railings of the technical school. At that time, Dad was working as a blacksmith for a Mr. Dick Chatterton at Hallington. At Pokeholes, as we knew it, he had an empty cottage, so we went there. Mum was pregnant and upset. My sister was born December the 9th that year. But Granny and Grandad went to live in Ludgate, opposite Thorne's garage. I still have a Bible presented to them by the Bible Society, as the family Bible was washed away. He had been a local preacher and was a member of the chapel near Cannon Street then. I wish now I had listened about the flood more, but the whole day must have been shocking to see homes, etc., being washed away. The morning after the night of the flood, taking shelter in the town hall, with the donation of 5 shillings, they went to look what was left. The table stuck to the ceiling with the little weekend joint. Mum had done the weekend shopping. Then there was a big search. Granny had a small trunk and was desperate to find it. Apparently she had been very thrifty and had some sovereigns in it. For years we kept it after they departed, still all dented on the lid. My granddad's name was Charles Samuel Hand. He died March the 14th, 1924, aged 85 years. And Granny was Emma Elizabeth Hand, who died March the 9th, 1930, also aged 85 years.
Hello, my name is Helen Sharp. I am a student at Louth Pupil Teachers Centre in Ramsgate. This is my account of the Louth Flood. Saturday afternoon, 29th of May 1920, seemed no different in the village of Bennyworth, where with my mother I walked the mile to South Willingham Station, where we boarded the 1:48 train for an afternoon in Louth. The dull weather, with little more than a hint of rain, was in no way an indication of the harassing incidents we were to witness before our return. On that memorable afternoon, most probably the best decision I ever made was that of wearing my new hat. Arriving in Louth at about 2:15, we walked down Ramsgate, pausing in Eastgate to look at the shops, and then going into the market hall, where we bought a selection of boiled sweets. I am sure the pink and yellow pear drops would be included in our choice. Then we moved into Mercer Row, where at Topless & Co. Drapers, Mother was to have a fitting for her new dress. Miss Chester, in charge of dresses, welcomed us warmly, and in due course the dress arrived. After the fitting, Foreman's Cafe seemed very attractive, and before long we were both enjoying tea and cakes. My choice would be choux pastry, full of thick squelchy cream. Shortly after 4:30, I persuaded Mother to begin our mile walk to the station. The sky was overcast and a storm seemed to be brewing. Fortunately for both of us, she agreed, and at quite a slow walk we set off. Very soon we needed our umbrellas, and by the time we reached Ramsgate, the rain had increased in violence. Completely unaware of the approaching danger, our one thought was to reach the station before we were wet through. By the time we arrived at the fairly steep incline, we were in a safe zone. Nevertheless, we continued to hurry. The thought of my new hat rested heavily upon me. After going through the barrier, we made our way to the ladies' waiting room, where we intended spending the 25 minutes before the departure of the 5:40. Our parcels had scarcely reached the table before a porter rushed in, shouting loudly, "There's a flood!" By this time the rain was less heavy, and in company with the station staff, our parcels and my hat left on the table, we walked to the top of the incline, from which we could view the scene in safety. To my amazement, a wall of water nearly 6 feet high was moving along Ramsgate with a force which was unbelievable. As it raged round the corner into Ramsgate Road, it demolished the end house before continuing its journey of devastation. The sight of seeing much of this house swept away is one I never forgot. The most upsetting scene was that of an old lady kneeling at the upstairs window of the house in the same row, with outstretched hands praying to be rescued. The bright pink of her little woolen cape seemed to be a signal to would-be rescuers. It worked, and she was eventually saved by a group of men. Swept by the torrents, a pig finally came to rest in the porch of an inn at the corner of Newbridge Hill. His strange companion, once a beautiful bedraggled rooster, lay by his side. We did not see the destruction of 3 houses opposite the end of James Street, but the cries for help were clearly heard. Later, we learned that the changing of course by the water may have saved both life and property in James Street, but resulted sadly enough in loss of life in Ramsgate. By about 6 o'clock we retraced our steps, conscious of not being able to help with the rescue. Our thoughts turned to home, but it was not until 6:30 p.m. that it was decided to run the Lincoln train as far as Withcall as a safety precaution until the cuttings between Withcall and Donington and South Willingham had been surveyed. No train would be allowed to pass beyond that point. Through the kindness of Mr. Ward of Withcall House, my mother and I were taking the rest of our journey by car, arriving home about 7:30, where we received a warm welcome. No details of the flood had yet reached the village, but the heavy rain and non-appearance of the 6:07 train had caused concern. Owing to the damage to the bridge over the River Bain, the railway service between Lincoln and Louth was cancelled for about 10 days. I did not mind at all, as I felt I never wanted to visit Louth again. However, just a fortnight later, I joined the train girls, each with their own bottle of water, and returned to school. The Technical College in James Street had suffered heavy damage, and the Louth Pupil Teachers' Centre had now moved to the Congregational Sunday School, where it was to stay until the end of term. Some weeks later, we went to college to look at the damage to our property, which was still in our mud-filled desks. Eventually, I received £2 compensation. I bought a pencil box with a sliding lid and a red-covered Bible, the latter for 4 shillings and 6pence. My shoe bag, ward shoes and gym shoes had already been replaced by my mother. It was an experience I would never want to repeat.
The Great Flood at Louth, May 29th, 1920. What is it that impresses me so while reading the Louth Times, to take up my pen and write these few simple rhymes? It was on the 29th of May, will long remembered be, by the inhabitants of Louth, which was flooded like a sea. The waters came from every hand, the waves rolled mountains high. The bravest heart then quaked with fear on seeing dangers nigh. About 2,000 tons of water fell, but I think a little more, for the water it rushed down the streets like breakers on the shore. Some said it was a bursting cloud, and others a water spout, for it swept away the hedges and gates, and tore trees up by the roots. For many had come from miles around, to see where your loved ones sleep. They can rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. The funeral 'tis a solemn scene, the hearse it moves so slow, and from many a sympathetic heart hot tears do freely flow. So mothers dry your falling tears, your dear ones they are blessed. They are encircled in the Saviour's arms, and on his bosom rest. Then let the darkest cloud o'ercast, let destructive floods descend, for thou wilt guide me while life shall last, I'll trust thee to the end.